All right. All right. All right. We're going to try this out. I am Dr. J, Demon Hunter, knower of things, and I am working on this YouTube Live where we're going to actually do a list of 5 types of jinn. So if you have listened to the most recent podcast, The Real Demons of Pop Culture, you're going to see that it was all about the jinn. And I said on the podcast that I would be doing a live YouTube show where I'm going to discuss with you 5 types of jinn. So if you want to follow along with the slideshow, you need to be on YouTube. If you're on TikTok, hello. But what I'm doing here is, oops, this is all trying to get this all done so it looks good. And we'll see. Yeah, I think the audio sounds good and everything. So once again, hello, Dr. J here, retired demon hunter, knower of things, and I am going to talk about 5 types of jinn. The 5 types of jinn. There are many types. These are 5 very popular ones. If you want to follow me on YouTube, you can go to my bio, click there, and you can follow me there. And let me see. You can also comment there, and I can bring that up. But let's get into it. So let's get into 5 types of jinn. The jinn, if you're Muslim, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you are not, you're going to learn a lot today. And so what we're going to do is get this little slideshow started. Here we go. The jinn, 5 types. So meet your new Defense Against the Dark Arts instructor. That is me, TikTok's favorite demon hunter, Dr. J, retired demon hunter, knower of things, and I am the host of the Real Demons of Pop Culture podcast. And if you are watching me on YouTube and you don't follow me already on TikTok, it's at James Ippoliti on TikTok. So I'd love to see any of you who have not already found me on TikTok to come on over. Have fun if you're into things like the occult, witchcraft, superstitions, monsters, demons, all that fun occulty stuff. We're going to talk about the jinn. So what are the jinn? That is the question we want to answer. And the jinn, often al-jinn or d-jinn, it's spelled D-J-I-N-N sometimes. They're shape-shifting spirits. They are made of fire and air. So when we talk about the creation of man, we always say that man is from the earth or created from clay. The jinn were created before man through a smokeless fire. So very cool stuff. And they have origins in pre-Islamic Arabia. They are the inspiration for Aladdin's genie. And that is something I didn't know when I was growing up, that the Aladdin story, the lamp, the genie, all that stuff is based off the jinn. Actually, jinn is plural. Jinni is a singular jinn. And so we basically changed the word from jinni to genie. So the lamp, the genie, that's all part of this pre-Islamic Arabia folklore. Really cool stuff. And I find it fascinating. So if you're following along on TikTok, I have some kind of rose goal. I don't even know what that is, but I put it in there. It said, hey, create a goal. So I did it. So I think it's up to 10 roses. We'll see if we can make 10 roses. All right, let's get into the jinn. We're still talking about them. They have held a space in Arab culture for almost as long as Arab culture itself. Yet, they have transcended both religion and the physical world. So little is understood about the spirits, but jinn, who are part of Islam, they are not worshipped. Well, they're not supposed to be worshipped in it. Doesn't mean people don't try, right? They do have free will, which is interesting. You're going to find out about the 5 types of jinn, that all of them have this free will. All jinn have free will. They have much to teach us about a culture, about the people, and their multiple religions. So let's go to the 5 types of jinn. If you're following along on YouTube, you'll be able to see my slides. So the 5 types, and correct me if I am saying any of these wrong, but type 1, Married. Then there's the IFRITs, the Ghouls, they might be my favorite, the Silat, and the Jinn. So right there are the 5 we're going to get into. So let's move on to the first one, the Marid. So what do we know about the Marid? They are the most popular type of jinn, the Marid. The word Marid translates into rebellious, and I am certainly a rebellious person, and I love things that are rebellious. They are the most dangerous and the most evil type of jinn. They are incredibly powerful, and they are favored troops of Iblis. Now, Iblis is kind of like, I have to get more into it, but it's like, Satan type thing. Very proud and arrogant. And because they're proud and arrogant, they're actually easily influenced or easily manipulated to do someone's chores. So if you wanted them to do something, because they're so proud, like you can get them to do things. They're very easily manipulated in that way. Definitely also, they are from pre-Islamic lore. And they integrate it into Western folklore as the genie, as I had said earlier. Okay, so the genie, the Marid is the most popular because we know it from Aladdin. They are born with free will, which all jinn are. So jinn are like another type of creature. There's humans, there's angels, and there are jinn. And so the jinn, they have free will, they can procreate, they can marry, and they die. So they are just living in a different dimension that we can't see, but they can see us. Now, they can ally with humans, but usually when they ally with humans, they're either battle before that, and then they kind of become friends after the battle. You could flatter them. So flattery works a lot on these Marid, and rituals. So if you want them to do your bidding, you need to do rituals. You need to flatter them. So that is type 1, the Marid. Let's move on to our second type of jinn. These are the IFRITs. That's IFRITs. If you're not watching this on YouTube, that is what it is. They are infernal creatures. That means they basically are from the underworld, from hell. They are gigantic and they are winged. They have a tribal social structure that they adhere to, which means they are ruled by kings and leaders. They have free will to choose faith and actions, and so they are thought of as evil a lot, but they do have the free will to choose between good or evil actions. So they may choose good, they may choose evil. So they're not inherently all evil. It's their choice. It is a legend that King Solomon imprisoned an Ifrit and convinced him to be his servant. Now, it's also a legend that King Solomon didn't just enslave this one. Many jinns were under King Solomon's control, and it is believed that the jinn are the ones who created King Solomon's temple because he had control. Now, no one else ever had control before or since, only King Solomon. They reside in ruins. So you may find them mostly in Islamic. They believe that the Ifrits reside in ruins. In African culture, it's believed that they live in the bottom of muddy pools or swamps, things like that. They can marry and procreate with their own, or they can marry and procreate with humans, creating hybrids. And they come around. This Ifrits are actually in a lot of pop culture. They are in a lot of different TV series and things like that. This type of jinn is very popular in pop culture. Let's move on to our third type of jinn. The third type of jinn might be my favorite because the word ghoul, this jinn influenced the ghouls. So I feel like I just lost a light, but maybe I didn't. I don't know. Something went dark. That was weird. Anyway, we're live. Things happen. All right. The ghoul. Now, the way it's spelled as a jinn is Ghuls. And we angelicized it to ghouls, Ghoul. Now, the ghouls are ferocious, and they feed on human corpses and blood. And they love to lure unsuspecting travelers and children. They lure them in and they eat them. These ghouls are this is like probably the one you never want to walk into, but the problem is they're very good at luring people. They're very good at luring humans. They reside in graveyards. They can shapeshift into animals. Most commonly, they shapeshift into hyenas. And they may make a sound like an animal sound that you might go investigate. Boom. You're caught. You're eaten. Ghoul got you. The ghoul got you. So they also shapeshift into females. Now, it's most common that there's these female, they're called Ghoulah, Ghouleh. They're beautiful women that lure these men. They're seductress, and they lure these men into the graveyard. And then, boom, you've been eaten. They are cannibalistic, eating all the flesh and blood of humans. So they love to eat us. And so if you run across a female ghoul and you're not sure, basically you're some dude, maybe you're a woman that's into a woman, right? And you're being lured by this beautiful woman. And she's like, come on into the graveyard. Come on into the graveyard. Check her feet because they have donkey legs. If the woman has donkey legs, she is a ghoul. That's how you can tell. Pretty cool, right? All right. Let's keep going. Our fourth type of ghoul, or not ghoul, jinn. Our fourth type is the Silat. I haven't gotten any roses in the TikTok universe. I haven't got a single rose. It says 0 10. I don't know if I want to do these goals because it's very depressing looking at this and seeing that I have no roses. It's like, really? Not one person loves me enough to send me a rose. Oh well, let's go to our fourth type of jinn, the Silat. Now, these are malicious shapeshifters. They can shapeshift into animals and humans. Now, this is a jinn thing. I keep saying this, but jinn can shapeshift into animals or humans. So it's not like specific to one type of jinn. It's sometimes they might shape shift into specific ones. Like I said, you're going to see the ghoul shapeshift into a seductive woman. But the thing about the Silats is they shapeshift into humans, and they're the most convincing. They're practically indistinguishable between a real human and a jinn that has shapeshifted into a human. They are the smartest and the most powerful, but they're also the most dangerous. And again, this is because they're almost indistinguishable between a jinn that's morphed into a human and a real human. So let's get moving on. Now, they usually, again, like the ghoul, it's very common for a Silat to transform into a beautiful woman. Can be male, but more often they transform into a beautiful woman. They seduce, they marry men, they procreate with humans, they create hybrid children. And in the European culture, these Silats are called succubus. They're also the European hag. So this is the fourth type of jinn. And if you haven't watched the episode yet if you haven't listened to my most recent the real demons of pop culture. I talk a lot about the jinn. This is just, I wanted to have this separate because this is more in depth about 5 types of jinn. The podcast goes into the whole history and more. So definitely check that out. If you're interested in giving me a rose, I'm trying to reach a goal of 10 roses. Would love to see if that can happen. I don't know what that means, but I put it up there because TikTok suggested it. Let's get into our final 5th type of jinn called the Jan. The Jin Jan. Hey, hello, whoever's watching in YouTube. Hello. The Jan are probably like the oldest, like because they existed before they became the Jinn. So they're the predecessor of the Jinn is the Jan, the Jin Jan, Jin Jan, blah blah blah. So they ruled over the earth for 2,000 years before the creation of man. And the king, Jan ibn Jan, ruled over the world inhabited by jinns. So the Jan king, ooh, I think I got, oh, Rose, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm at 50% of my goal, it looks like. So I really, really appreciate that. That's very nice. I didn't expect I'd have any. I'm very, very touched. Thank you. Okay, so the Jan ruled over the whole world of jinn. They existed before humans, and the king eventually offended God. And so they had this battle, and the Jan lost, and God was like, okay, you offended me. We had a war, you lost, and now we're going to reduce your power. So you're much weaker. The Jan today are much, much weaker than the Jan used to be. That does not mean that they are not still immensely strong. They are absolutely very much strong jinn. However, they're really no longer malicious to humans. Unless you really piss one off, a Jan is going to go about its day not caring about humans. They're not going to get involved with a human. But if you severely offend a Jan, yeah, they might get pissed off and be malicious. But overall, this is probably the one type of Jan you don't have, or Jinn, you don't have to worry about is the Jan. The Jin Jan, right? They do live in desolate deserts, and they sometimes take the form of sandstorms or camels, and usually white camels. And if there's a traveler going about in the desert, they're the ones who reveal the oasis to the traveler. But normally, like I said, they will stay out of the way of humans. If they like you, they may do some favors for you. So that is the 5 types of jinn. And right now, I'm going to give you a couple things you can look at. Pop culture jinn, we already brought up Aladdin. So Aladdin and Aladdin's lamp, that is the jinn. And it's our first type. The Marid is the genie in the bottle. That is a jinn. So when you're watching Aladdin, you're learning about jinn, sort of. Miss Marvel. If you have watched Miss Marvel, very good series on Disney Plus. The enemy, sort of, is the jinn, because, like I said, jinn are living in a dimension that we can't see, but they can see us. And therefore, in Miss Marvel, there are some who choose to be evil or do evil, and there are some who choose not to. So it's very fun to knowing more about jinn when you watch Miss Marvel. I think it's much more interesting knowing this information when you watch Miss Marvel. Now, there is a book, it's a collection of Middle Eastern folk tales called 1001 Nights. And it's more commonly known in like the Western world as the Arabian Nights. And there are a couple stories you might want to check out. There's the fisherman and the Jinni. And there's also the porter and the young girl. These both include different types of jinn that you can find out about. Now, we're going to move on and talk about how you can defeat the jinn. So how do you beat a Jinn? There are two things that the Jinn are afraid of. Two things. Get your notepad, get your notepad and your pencil. Get ready to write this down. You need to know this to protect yourself against the Jinn. And if there's any tips that are coming in, it's hard for me to see because I wear glasses and I got lights blaring. But thank you for any hearts or whatever, roses. I love all this stuff that you're doing in TikTok for me. I really appreciate it. Let's get into the two things you need to have to defend yourself against any Jinn. So the first is iron, IRON, iron. I always feel like I'm saying that wrong. Maybe an iron piece of metal or iron tools or screws or just some kind of iron bar. I don't know. Maybe you can buy a necklace made of iron, but they are afraid of iron. So definitely. Now, I had done a superstition about iron on TikTok, and it's a very powerful metal when it comes to defense against the dark arts because it was always thought of as being super, super powerful. So that is number one. The second one might be a little bit harder to obtain, and that is a wolf. They're afraid of wolves. Now, I don't know, maybe in certain parts of the world, you can own a wolf. I guess you can. It's just that it might not be safe. But if you can get a pet wolf, um, that would be ideal. Now that I said that, though, I want you to I don't want you to if you already have pets, animals usually can see Jinn. So if you're like sleeping at night and your dog gets to the window and starts barking out the window and you don't see anything out there, it's possible the dog is seeing Jinn. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the roses. Pets can see the Jinn. So that's how many times have you had your pet barking at something? You're like, there's nothing there. You're crazy. No, they might be seeing the Jinn. That is something that's nice to have with your pets. So we're almost finished here. And if you're listening and you want to become part of a Facebook group, it's called Monsters, Magic, and Mayhem. The link is in my bios. It's a brand new group. It's just getting started. But if you want to discuss these things further, I want to have this group of people who want to talk about monsters, magic, and mayhem. And we can talk more about the Jinn in these groups, which would be fantastic. And I would love for people to just get involved in this community a little bit more. And so if you're on Facebook, just search Monsters, Magic, and Mayhem or go into my link. And from there, you can become a member of the group and we can talk about this stuff more. I really hope to see that group grow. And that is the 5 types of Jinn. Remember, every 2 weeks, I do a podcast called The Real Demons of Pop Culture. It will be not this Monday, but the Monday after, I will be doing an episode on the Amityville Horror. So I'm doing all the research right now, and I want to do the podcast show, and then that week following the show, do a YouTube live where I'll also do TikTok live and discuss a little bit more in detail a certain aspect of the podcast. And then I got a lot more fun, ghosty stuff coming up. And that's all I got. I'm going